Somewhere in Nairobi right now, a Matatu conductor is doing math in his head. Not on paper, in his head. Before the stage even fills, a mama mboga is adding 10 shillings to a kilo of tomatoes. Quietly, hoping nobody asks. A border rider is calculating whether tonight's trip will cover tomorrow's fuel. And somewhere on Kenyatta Avenue, a commuter is staring at an M-Pesa balance, trying to decide if they walk the last kilometer. None of these people are talking to each other, but they are all responding to the same number. A number that changes on the 14th of every freaking month, announced by an acronym most Kenyans can't even expand. EPRA. And felt by everyone immediately. On the 14th of June 2026, EPRA announced a cut. Diesel down 10 shillings a litre. Petrol down 22 cents. Kerosene didn't move. And the government called this a reduction. A reduction from what exactly? Diesel had just spent 2 months above 230 shillings a litre, the highest this country has ever seen. So when it comes down by 10 shillings, is that really a relief, or is it just the system catching its breath? Here's a question we are going to sit with today. If the government can lower fuel prices when it decides to, through a phone call, a presidential pledge, a subsidy, why can't it lower them permanently? And if it can't, what exactly are you paying for every time you fill up? Welcome back to the Kenyan Week That Was. I'm your host, DY. Let's start at the beginning, because the beginning in most cases matters. Kenya does not produce fuel, the fuel it burns. Not a meaningful amount. Almost everything that powers a Matatu, a generator, a factory, a border, it came off a ship from somewhere else. Since 2023, Kenya has been running what's called a government-to-government framework, or G2G as we commonly hear. Instead of dozens of private companies competing to import fuel, the old system, 3 international oil companies now supply Kenya directly. Saudi Aramco, ENOC, and ADNOC. One fixed arrangement, one locked price structure. And here's the part that matters. The CS, Cabinet Secretary Opiyo Wandayi, told us on air that this framework locked in something called freight and premium costs. That's the shipping, the insurance, the cost of getting the fuel from there to here, locked in, fixed for the life of the freaking deal. Now, to understand why that locked number matters, you need to know what happened next. In early 2026, war broke out involving Iran, US, and Israel. And for the first time in a long time, oil refineries in the Gulf started getting hit. UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, drones, missiles, several refineries shut down entirely. And the Strait of Hormuz, the most famous strait right now in the world, the narrow waterway that roughly a fifth of the world's oil moves through, was effectively closed. Countries that were buying fuel on the open spot market, shipment by shipment, whatever the day's price was, suddenly found themselves paying close to $300 per metric ton just to ship it. Nearly 4 times the normal cost. Some of those countries ran out completely. Long queues, empty pumps, rationing, people sleeping near petrol stations. Kenya, under the G2G deal, kept the locked rate. No stockouts, no queues. The CS on air called it God sent. And on that narrow point, Kenya having fuel in the tanks when other countries didn't, we've got to give the government some credit, because the government's claim hold. That's not spin. That's just logistics. It's, the Swahili say, mgala muue, but haki umpe. So we have to give credit where credit is due, because we never ran out of fuel. There was always fuel, even though it came at a steeper cost. So global oil shocks are real. Currency pressure is real. The shilling against the dollar, is real. When the CS says we're living in uncertain times, he's not lying. But here's where it gets interesting. Even with that locked shipping rate, even with no stockouts, diesel in Nairobi still reached 232 shillings a litre, the highest this country has ever recorded. So if the shipping cost was protected, what was it? What is it that we are missing? The shipping was protected, the supply was protected, and diesel still hit a record high. There's a 37 shilling gap between what the fuel actually costs and what you pay at the pump. And it's being paid from a fund that is running out of money as we currently speak. Where does that money come from? That's next. Here's a number the cabinet secretary put on national television himself. The actual cost of a litre of diesel in mid-2026. What it would have been without, any government intervention. 259 bob. What Kenyans were paying at the pump, 222. That gap, that 37 bob, is being covered by someone. We'll get to that in a few. So let's crack open a litre of diesel and see what's actually in it. Broadly, 4 things: the cost of the product itself, put on storage, the margin of oil marketing companies, and the part most people skip right past, taxes, levies. Let's start with the margin. The Total, Rubis, Vivo Energy type companies, the ones who actually run the stations you pull into, get 6 bob per litre. That number isn't just picked. The CS told us it comes from something called a cost of service study, a review the law requires every 5 years. It calculates the actual cost of running the supply chain, then sets a reasonable margin on top of all of that. Then comes the levies. Not 1, not 2, 9 freaking levies. 9 separate charges stacked on top of each other, each with its own name, its own legal basis, and in at least one case, its own debt already borrowed against, or in the frequent word that we hear, already securitized. 2 of these 9 need special attention because both came up directly, on air, on freaking record, in the CS's interview on Fixing the Nation. The road maintenance levy, currently at 25 shillings per litre. It used to be 18. That jump alone is 7 bob you weren't paying before. Now, the CS told us that the portion of this levy, about 7 shillings 50 cents, has already been securitized. Plain language, the government already borrowed money against this future revenue. It's already spent. It's money that doesn't exist. Contractors are already on Kenyan roads right now because of it. That portion, he said, can't simply be removed. That 7 bob is there to stay perpetually. Unless we change the law, of course. The CSA's own arithmetic leaves roughly 10 bob of the road maintenance levy unencumbered. This is the figure we return to when checking with what the MP of Kiharu, Mr. Dinji Nyoro's proposal against the CS's own number. But here's the thing, 25 shillings total, 750 securitized. That still leaves roughly 10 shillings of that levy sitting there. We'll come back to that. Then there's the Petroleum Development Levy. The PDL. This is a fund the government is drawing from to keep your pump price below what it would actually cost. 5 shillings 40 cents per litre on diesel and petrol. 40 cents on kerosene. On paper, that generates roughly 24 billion shillings a year. That sounds like a lot. Until the CS told us how fast it's being spent. April to May cycle, 6.2 billion. May to June, 5 billion. Then another 2.7 on top. June to July, 9 billion more. In 3 months, we've burned through more than 12 billion shillings. And the CS's estimate of what's left, around 18 billion. He wouldn't say how long that figure would hold if things got worse. So here's the picture. The shipping cost, protected by a locked contract. The margin for oil companies set by a 5-year scientific study. And the gap between what the fuel actually cost and what you pay at the pump being filled by a fund that is draining faster than it's collecting. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, just cut the levies, problem solved, hold that freaking thought. Because in the same interview, the cabinet secretary was handed a list of exactly those proposals. Not hypothetical ones, real ones, from sitting members of parliament, from an opposition costing exercise called the People's Budget. And what he said back is the most important part of this whole episode. That's coming up right after this. Real quick, let me tell you about Jenga Circle. Each episode has receipts in it. Real numbers, real facts, things we've actually shown you and have backed up. Watch the episode, find them. And later in this episode, I'll say a phrase, one phrase, pulled straight from this week's story. You'll know it when you hear it. Promise you. And when you watch the full episode, find the receipts. This week, there are 2. Catch the code phrase, email it all to jengacircle.kwtw@gmail.com. With your IG, TikTok, or YouTube handle, you gain 1 entry. Share the episode to your stories or to your friends, you get an additional 2 entries. And 1 person per week stands to win 5,000 bob. But like we always say, the essence is not the money or the prize or the giveaway. The essence is we push this narrative so that we can be able to educate, we can be able to bring our people a little more civic education right next to their phones and to people that you know, so that we can be able, whenever we discuss, when we are catching pint and we're doing other things, we can have proper facts, because whatever we do on this show, we get the freaking receipts. So each week, whoever has the most entries goes into a draw, 5,000 bob in cash on M-Pesa. And as more people join the circle, guess what? The 5,000 bob grows. But honestly, the prize isn't really the point. The point is every person who watches this, shares this, and talks about this makes this story a little harder to ignore. This week, we're talking about why fuel prices in Kenya never really go down. Stay with me. Pay attention. There are 2 receipts in this episode. Find them both, and you stand to win the giveaway. Before we get to the proposals, and we're getting there, it's only fair that we hear the government's case in full, because some of it genuinely holds up. Receipts over vibes cuts both ways. Argument number 1, the VAT cut was real and it cost real money. In 2026, the government cut VAT on petroleum products from 16% to 8%. That's 50% reduction. Treasury PS Dr. Chris Kiptoo said that one move cost the government over 12 billion shillings in revenue it didn't collect. That is a real number. No one can argue with the facts. CS called it a painful decision, and he said it at a time when the finance bill was explicitly designed not to raise taxes. So the government took a hit. That, ladies and gentlemen, is documented. Argument number 2, electricity tariffs were frozen too. The government also froze a scheduled electricity tariff review. By law, that review happens every 3 years. The CS said the decision to suspend it was deliberate to avoid any additional shocks hitting households and manufacturers at the exact same moment as the fuel crisis. Again, freaking truth. On top of that, electricity bills also dropped in June 2026 by about 26 cents per kilowatt hour, driven by the forex adjustment component, exchange rate movement, not a government decision. But Kenyans felt it either way. Argument number 3, the subsidy is real money spent in real time. And the subsidy, as we covered, is real money spent in real time. Billions of shillings, cycle after cycle from the PDL fund, keeping that pump price at 222 instead of 259. That's not a hypothetical, that's a balance sheet dropping in real freaking time. And the CS made one more argument. Kenya is operating in genuinely unprecedented conditions. A closed Strait of Hormuz, refineries being hit by drones, a global price benchmark that, in his own words, could skyrocket beyond reasons of imagination. His argument is that what you're seeing from the government isn't stubbornness, it is crisis management. All of that is fair. All of it is documented. None of it is invented. But here's where we have to ask the harder questions. Because in this same interview, same chair, same morning, when specific costed proposals were placed on the table, the response wasn't let's look at the numbers. It was something entirely different. 2 groups, a government side MP and an opposition economists, independently, both came up with detailed costed proposals to cut the price of fuel. One of them claims diesel could drop by 50 shillings a litre. The CS responded to both on the record. One word is the center of this entire episode, so stay freaking with us. Proposal: reduce the oil marketing company's margin from 6 shillings to 4 shillings per litre, 2 shillings on every litre at every pump. The CSA's response: the margin is set by a scientific process. Change it carelessly and you make the business uneconomical for the marketers, and then the supply chain breaks. But when the host pushed him directly, is it movable? The CS said yes, it is movable. If you got the marketers in a room and they agreed to a cut, it could happen. Or if other marketers were willing to operate on a smaller margin. So there is a possibility. But are we willing to pursue it. Scientific but negotiable, fixed but movable. If the right meeting happens, make of that what you will. Think of proposal number 2. Scrap VAT on fuel entirely. 8% to 0% by Kiharu MP Dindi Nyoro. The proposal, take the VAT on the petroleum all the way to 0. The MP's argument was that yes, in the short term, that hurts and the government loses revenue. But you spur freaking consumption. And when you spur consumption, you also spur production. Economic activity picks up. And over time, you make that 8% back and then some more. And this is where the interview turned. The CS called it directly on national freaking television a very populist statement. He said you can't call it a short-term measure when nobody knows how long this crisis will last. He said the MP was ignoring the fact that tax is only part of the price. If the international benchmark skyrockets, a VAT cut gets swallowed whole. Nothing left to show for it. And yet, in the very same breath, the CS said nothing is impossible. He said the government had already done it once. He said if the math adds up, it's on the table. So the disagreement isn't really about whether VAT cuts work. It seems to be about who gets to propose one. Just because it doesn't come from us and it's coming from a quote unquote someone who's seen as the opposition, it's not a very good idea. But if we do it, then perhaps it could work. Proposal number 3, reduce the road maintenance levy, 25 shillings to 18 shillings. They roll the road maintenance levy back from 25 shillings to 18 shillings, which used to actually be a 7 shillings cut. The CS pushed back. The securitized portion, remember, is about 750. You can't touch that without pulling contractors off Kenyan roads. He suggested the proposal might come from ignorance of how the levy actually works. But here's what he also confirmed. The encumbered portion of that levy is roughly 10 shillings. The MP's proposed cut is 7 shillings. 7 fits inside 10. The room exists. By the CS's own arithmetic, the response treated it as though it didn't. Fourth proposal. On the 11th of June 2026, 4 days before this interview, opposition economists released what they call the People's Budget. Their proposal, repeal 3 things entirely: the import declaration fee, the railway development levy, and the road maintenance levy on fuel. Their claim, diesel drops from 222 shillings to approximately 170 shillings a litre. 52 shillings gone. More than 20% of the current price. And to that, the CS responded by saying the government is open to people's views. There's a budget process. These proposals can be submitted. On the substance, he returned to the road maintenance levy and the securitized portion. The import declaration fee, not addressed on record. The railway development levy, also not addressed. 2 of the 3 components of this proposal received no direct response. Why? Because he doesn't want to commit, because he cannot authoritatively give us a valid reason why we can't suspend or remove them entirely. Because as we stand, do they really help us? Are they causing more problem by shrinking our economy, by over-exerting on every shilling that every business person and household needs to spend to be able to make do with what they need to do to survive? 2 of the 3 proposals by the People's Budget were not even addressed. Look at what just happened across 4 proposals. 1, movable, if marketers agree. 2, populist. 3, met with a counter figure that by the CS's own arithmetic, leave room from the proposal didn't even fully use. 4, procedurally welcome, no substantive response to 2 of the 3 components. 4 proposals, 4 different directions around the same freaking wall. And then the host asked it directly. Is fuel an easy cash cow for the government? And the CS, to his credit, answered honestly. He said, I get why there's a hesitation to touch any levies on fuel, because it's a low-hanging fruit for government. It's money the exchequer can rely on. That is not an accusation from the outside. That is the cabinet secretary's own description of why these levies don't move. Put the levy names down for a moment. Step away from the percentages because none of this is abstract. Diesel is not just what goes into a Land Cruiser. Diesel is what moves milk from Kinangop to Nairobi. It is the irrigation pump in Mwea, the generator at a clinic in a county where the grid isn't reliable, the Matatu that gets a Form 3 student to school, the same Matatu that gets Mama Mboga to market before sunrise. That is what diesel cost actually means. So when diesel goes up by 10 shillings, that cost does not stay in the fuel tank. It moves into the price of milk, into the price of maize flour, the Matatu fare, a bag of cement, the plate of food in a worker's canteen. Economists have a term for all of this. It's called the pass-through. But Mwananchi have a simpler one. Bei imepanda. The price has gone up again. And here's the part that stings the most. The CS explained the pricing mechanism on air. It's called M-1. Fuel sold this month is priced against last month's international benchmark. So even if the Iran-US ceasefire holds today, even if the global oil prices drops tomorrow, you won't feel it tomorrow. You will feel it partially a month from now, progressively. Cascaded. That's the word he actually used. Cascaded. Prices go up immediately when the world gets worse. They come down slowly, progressively, when it gets better. That asymmetry is not a conspiracy. It is just a mechanism. But Mwananchi doesn't experience mechanism. Mwananchi experiences a fare that went up in April and as of this recording is yet to come down by at least that 10 shillings. When diesel rises, bread rises, milk rises, Matatu fare rises, rent rises because landlords pass on water pumping costs, generator costs, security costs, even the road your Matatu drives on. The repair of that road is funded by the same levy that is inside the diesel that just got more expensive. It's a loop. And for that matter, a very, very expensive loop. But salaries don't change on the 14th of every freaking month. There's no EPRA for wages, no EPRA for salaries. So you and I continue to get slammed over and over and over again by all these costs and never get any form of reprieve. Fuel taxation collects efficiently. It's hard to reverse even when the room clearly exists. 4 proposals on the table, 4 different ways around the same wall. So what does that tell us who this system was built to serve? One more question, then the numbers speak for themselves. So here's where we land. Not on outrage, on a question. Fuel taxation works. Administratively at least. It works better than almost anything else the government has. Every person who moves, every person who eats something that was transported, every person who buys anything that required delivery, they pay it, directly or indirectly. Collection doesn't need an audit. Evasion is nearly impossible. The CS said it plainly. Consumption is how government makes money. Absolutely efficient. It's reliable. It's there every other month. And that's true. It is also, in a way, the whole problem. Because a tax that is easy to collect from everyone is also a tax that is very easy to forget is being collected until the price at the pump forces you to notice. The government needs revenue. Roads need maintenance. Debt, and some of it borrowed against the levy, the very levies we have been talking about, needs servicing. Nobody serious disputes that a country costs money to run. But there is a point where taxation designed to fund an economy starts working against it instead. The CS himself acknowledged it. Every shilling you give up in VAT is matched somewhere by economic activity that also disappears. People drive less, consume less, produce less. So the real question isn't should fuel be taxed? Of course it should. The real question is who decides where that line actually is between the tax that funds a country and the tax that quietly suffocates the people who are supposed to be growing. On the evidence of one interview, 4 costed proposals on the table, 3 deflected, 1 left half answered. That line is being drawn, and for now, it's being drawn by the people who benefit the most from where it sits. Maybe that's why these debates get so loud, so fast. It's not really about diesel. It's about VAT. And it's not about a levy with a name nobody can remember. It's about transport, food, school fees, the Matatu that gets your child to class, the generator that keeps a clinic open through a blackout, the border that is somebody's entire livelihood, riding on the price of 1 liter of diesel. So every time that number on the pump changes, it's asking the same question. The one it's always been asking: who is carrying the weight of this country? Tafakari hayo. I've been your host, DY, and have yourselves a lovely day, night, or evening, or afternoon, wherever you are. And we always say, receipts over vibes, always. Barakatele.